What's up, y'all? You're listening to the Extra Point College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Karnes, joined as always by my co-host, Daniel Hammock. Daniel, we have made it to week 3 of college football. We're 2 weeks in. We tried to warn you last week. There's not an off week in the sport ever. No matter what's going on, it might look like a sleepy week. There are upsets around the corner. Part of what makes this sport special. We had that this past weekend. We're going to talk about it. Daniel, you had some big life stuff happen. I really thought I was going to have to run a single episode this week, but dude, congrats, father of 3.
Appreciate it, man. Yeah, just keep on rolling. Actually had a baby on game day. You know, my son didn't want to miss out on another, football
Dude,
Saturday. So
he already missed
joined
one.
me as quick as possible. Yeah, dude. He didn't want to wait one more
Wasn't going to
week.
miss 2.
Yeah, he was here in time to watch Michigan and Oklahoma. So he got
both
to see
upsets.
the second half. Yeah, second half of both upsets. So yeah, he was definitely like, "Oh, okay, is this college football?" And I was like, "What, were you born yesterday?" And he's like, "No, it's today."
Today. Yeah, dude, he knew. He was like, I can't wait another second because everyone else is saying Sleepy Saturday, and I'm about to watch 2 major upsets in college football. So shout out to him. He didn't want to miss it. That's the level of commitment I'm looking for in my kids. So,
oh, absolutely.
Dude, congrats. Let's dive into the first quarter of this episode, Daniel. What is one thing you learned this weekend after watching another weekend of college football?
Yeah, I think for me it was John Mateer. I know that it was a hot name all off season. You and I were like, we're gonna wait and see, and we've had
Always
some of our colleagues that were like, hey, Josh Pate has him as his Heisman. A couple other people are trying to retroactively claim that they said the same thing. I don't think that they did. I was always high on him. I'm sure you were. Anyways, Chris Doring, some other guys on the SEC network, they were all high on him. And you and I made the contention, hey, if he's just pretty good, they're going to be better than they were. Well,
Yes.
Jacob, I would say through 2 games, John Mateer has returned OU to the team we expect them to be. And I'm not talking about this season. I'm talking about as a program. They are traditionally a run and gun, fun quarterback that has high upside potential for the offense. And then they usually have a bunch of defensive studs. Sometimes they don't play with them all together. There's a few of those years, Lincoln Riley years, they didn't play to their defensive potential. But they always had guys that could go to the NFL. Nick Benito, in the news this week, he was a former OU Sooner. He just got a 4-year extension. He's the highest paid non-quarterback right now in the league, defensive end. So they've got defensive guys that are in the league. They've got that heritage. This game, they were swarming all over the place. They made Michigan look, pedestrian at times, and they've got Michigan's athletes. So that was surprising. But yeah, Mateer, I think it just felt like I was watching a regular Oklahoma game. It didn't feel like these past couple of years. It was like it shook it off, So they would say, oh yeah, this is, Baker Mayfield. This is Kyler Murray. This is, even further back, Sam Bradford. This is a guy who can make plays while we watch him. So definitely fun, great showcase on national TV. Even some people said he had his Heisman moment. I think he elevates everybody around him too. So that's awesome.
I like it on John Mateer. I think I'm still waiting to see on the ceiling, but I think he's already met like you said, we called out, if he's pretty good, Oklahoma will be very good this year because the defense should be just as good. That looked to be the case on Saturday. Daniel, my one thing I learned, and I kind of mentioned it, is there are no off weeks in college football. That's the one thing I learned. And you had a banger in OU versus Michigan. You had 2 great rivalries. We talked about both of them. The Cy-Hawk game was great. Missouri-Kansas was a classic. You had major upsets. You had USF over Florida. You had Mississippi State over Arizona State. You had a great battle in a conference game in Ole Miss, Kentucky that you and I were kind of scratching our heads at the line and kind of showed its face right there in that game. So, man, there are no off weeks in college football. Those were just 6 games. There are several more that were good. There are no off weeks in college football. I'm keeping the stuff I learned very generic through 2 weeks because I don't want to be caught with a bad take here. I definitely learned this, and it's 2 weeks of college football. I'll get a more definitive one next week. How's that? Daniel, as we move into the second quarter, Daniel, what's one of the questions you have moving forward as we head into week 3?
Jacob, I'm looking at Florida. I mean, the big loss to South Florida, the multiple opportunities they had to win that game. My question is, the Florida culture sustainable? What I mean by that is Florida is known for having this larger than life personality and really being, kind of in your face. They're going to brag about it. They're going to, beat you down both from a confidence standpoint as well as on the field. This goes back to Spurrier. Spurrier was very much a guy that, hey, he'd talk the talk and he'd walk the walk. Well, then, they had their years of Ron Zook and they were kind of up and down, but they were still a tough team to play. They had Urban Meyer come in. Very much that same vein of having some guys that are just bad dudes who love to hit you, love to run past you and score, and they could just make you look like a fool and then tell you about it. And that's gone from Florida right now. As far as, or I say that's gone, the part where they're winning is gone. The undisciplined part is still there. Think about Marco Wilson a few years ago when, against LSU, where he throws the shoe and it was a third down stop under Dan Mullen. So, different coach. And then here under Billy Napier, Florida has a guy spit on another player. I don't know if this was a, copycat situation because he just saw Jalen Carter do it in the NFL, but he spits on a player and it extends the drive and it continues. Yeah. It's a where they're ready to win that game. They get the stop they need. They give South Florida another chance. And South Florida is a team. You give them a chance, they're going to take it. They're going to believe and they're going to execute. Especially this season, we've seen them take down 2 ranked opponents already. People are saying, is Napier done? My bigger question is, if they bring in somebody else, are they able to kind of harness that Florida culture that has been there over the past few decades?
Yeah, that, Florida, man, I was high on Florida coming into the season. They can turn around. They can go 3-2 in the next 5 games, and people forget about the USF game. Just like, hey, Notre Dame, people are going to mention this with every loss this year. Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois in week 2 last year. I think you nailed the problem, though, which is like it's still some of this fundamental stuff that seem to be issues with Florida, as well as play calling. And Billy Napier's calling the plays, and he's already said he's not giving up on that. I saw a very funny comment on the Cover 3 podcast, which was someone said, how many months would it take for Billy Napier and Mario Cristobal to do an escape room together? I thought that was very funny. Very funny question. But yeah, Florida, man, well, I'm sure we're going to have plenty more to talk about Florida this season. Daniel, my first question is, how many teams does the SEC get into the playoff this year? I'll say spoiler to our XPR. Here's some SEC bias. We've got 12 teams in the top 25 from the SEC as of right now in the XPR. Record versus the Power 4 so far, the SEC is 8-2 in out-of-conference games against other Power 4 opponents. Big 10 is 5-3. The Big 12 is 5-6. The ACC is 3-9. On top of that, you've got, the SMU result versus Penn State last year. It's going to, regardless of whether it's right or not, it's going to hang in the back of committee members' minds. Like, is this a year the SEC gets 5 teams in? And, if you've got, let's say, I think the SEC, I don't think there's one team that's separated themselves yet this year. What if you've got 3 2-loss teams and 4 more 3-loss teams? Like, could you see 5 teams get in, even if 2 of those have 3 losses? I think that'll be really interesting to see this year. So that's a question I have as we move forward this season.
Yeah, if I'm jumping to my next question, it is SEC related, because why would it not be? I'm sure you saw the awkward press conference for Steve Sarkisian. I'll keep mine as a rated G question. If Arch is hurt, because it did make me question it. If Arch Manning is hurt, does Texas still scare you? And I say that with all the love in the world for Texas's roster. I think they've got a great roster, and I think that, they're going to certainly, be able to win games even if Arch was not in there. But, I mean, backup quarterback Matthew Caldwell is redshirt senior. There's a reason he hasn't played so far. Trey Owens, redshirt freshman. Carl Lacey's that, highly rated true freshman. Texas is counting on next year Dia Bell coming in from American Heritage, 5-star quarterback, being their next guy. So if Arch comes back for another year, having a year of them both together. But my point is That injury is something we haven't really discussed because they've had a couple of quarterbacks each of the past few years. Think back, obviously they had Malik Murphy as a backup for a little bit, even before Arch was number two, behind Quinn Ewers. So, in this rise that Sark has had with Texas, they've had at least two high-end quarterbacks, and I would argue that right now they don't have a second if Arch is not the guy. So it did look like Arch was hurt based on what I saw. It was an extremely uncomfortable press conference when they asked him about it. He did finish the game for what it's worth, as much as it seemed like at least a non-issue. It does look like it's affecting his mechanics. So I wonder, he's his part of his game, what makes him special is his legs. So I don't know if in these bigger games that they do have, I know that they have somewhat of an easier SEC schedule, but in the bigger games that they do have, maybe the Red River rivalry, are they going to count on him to run the ball? And, is it just a stinger? Is it something that's going to linger all year? That's important. So I'm keeping my eye on that one.
Like, how good is Texas if Arch is hurt? I still think
Yeah.
very high floor. Personally,
Are they
I
a
just
playoff
think
team?
that
Playoff team without Arch?
I still think yes, because I think that I'll wait and see on the offensive line. The defense is good enough. I think that's my I think everyone forgets they also held Ohio State to 14 week one, and Julian Sand and Jeremiah Smith looked nothing opponent, but looked very good in week two. This is why it's early, man. Pate was talking about this of AP poll voters need to forget their preconceived notion. He was saying it in relation to. He was saying Florida State's not ranked that highly because you still have this preconceived notion that they were bad. But I think it goes both ways. Of what if I still think Alabama's pretty good? Therefore, I have Florida State ranked very highly. Or, well, my preconceived notion of Alabama was very good. I think they're awful. Then why would I have Florida State ranked if I think Alabama's awful? So I think it goes both ways of either the win was impressive or it wasn't. I think we're going to look back on this week one result and say 14-7. Those were two top six teams in the country with great defenses, kind of in a defensive slugfest in that game. I am curious if Arch is hurt. Some of the stuff just looks. His velocity is also down on his ball, beyond the wincing stuff. Yeah. The velo and arm angle is a little bit different than last year, so that is a curious question. My second question, Daniel, are big teams playing with their food, or is this cause for concern? The few different teams this weekend, a few more got highlights than others, but obviously Clemson having a 16-0 deficit to Troy at one point in that game. South Carolina messed around with South Carolina State. Texas A&M messed around with Utah State. Texas messed around with UTSA. Georgia messed around with Austin Peay. LSU messed around with Louisiana Tech. I personally think I have an answer, which I'll reference later, but my question is, are big teams playing with their food, or is this a cause for concern? And beyond even playing with the food, is this a consequence of the expanded schedule, right? Of you're going to have a longer season and tougher schedules in college football now. So, dude, these are 18 to 22-year-olds at the end of the day. I think it's one of Saban's greatest strengths as a coach was they seem prepped and ready to go every single year, every single game. They hardly ever did this with a lesser opponent, but I think you're seeing more and more big teams kind of mess with these, younger opponents. So I think it's hard, especially if you only played a couple of these teams, to get a read on these teams if they are just messing around, because we saw this last year, a couple of teams screw around with with lesser opponents and then absolutely flip a switch when it came to big games. And I think that's a skill too, is to have your team ready to flip that switch when it comes to big games. So it's just a question to have in the back of my mind, because we've got a couple games this week that we're going to talk about that I think this is going to play into. So that's a question I have moving forward. Daniel, we're getting here to halftime. I'm going to actually pull up our extra point rankings again as an explainer. These are our BCS style rankings, and these are meant to be representative of both how do computers see teams at this point in the season, mixed with Kelly Ford, K Ford ratings on Twitter, his most deserving rating, and then the eye test. You and I have polls into this, so a lot of movement early on in the season. If you're watching on YouTube or on Spotify, you can see it now. You've got Ohio State 1, big jumper. Oregon at 2, Ole Miss big jumper at 3. That was surprising to me. Georgia at 4, LSU at 5, Texas 6, Oklahoma 7. Penn State 8, Tennessee 9, Miami 10. You can see the rest of the top 25 on either of our Twitter accounts or Instagram or YouTube or Spotify if you're watching. You can check out the full top 25. Daniel, what teams surprise you? What teams jump out? I mean, I can start by saying Ole Miss surprised me because neither you nor I had them at 3 in our ballot. But I'll tell you what does of Ole Miss early is the power ratings. And again, it's where you're going to have a lot of fluctuation early. As far as strength of record goes, Ole Miss has played an SEC team already.
Mm-hmm.
Same with like Ohio State; they've played at Texas already, so that's in their resume. Versus, a Georgia has played an FCS opponent and a G6 opponent. Same with Utah. But like Vandy's ranked. Dude, Vandy's at 21. I think that's one that I personally, Daniel, I put them ahead of South Carolina in my top 25 because they have a common opponent. South Carolina played that opponent on a neutral site. Vandy went up to Lane Stadium and kind of beat the brakes off Virginia Tech there in that second half. So Ole Miss and Vandy, two teams that stuck out as I'm looking at our XPR.
Yeah, I agree on Ole Miss. That was one where, watching that game, it felt kind of sloppy. It was one that you and I just had called out. Hey, this one, last year obviously was a loss for Ole Miss, and it, ended up costing them ultimately because they should have dominated that Kentucky team. Kentucky hung in there this time, and Ole Miss had to rely on a backup quarterback for the last little bit. It looks like Austin Simmons is good, but as far as health wise, but and it's, same thing for Kentucky. They had a backup quarterback at the end. So it's kind of just a weird situation, closer games. So for them to jump, I'm almost looking at those teams in between and thinking, it was probably a little bit from the power side of them not dominating their opponent like they should have. And so that's what the offset came from, because Ole Miss was sitting in the 7th position the week before, so they kind of just moved ahead of the teams that struggle wins. My other one would be Oklahoma. I'm not surprised. I'm almost relieved to see where they are, because it feels like this is where they should be. They were 18 last week for us, and they hadn't played anybody yet, so obviously we need to wait and see. And these rankings, I think, are a good indication. I like seeing that Longhorn and that OU logo right beside each other. I'm excited about that game in a few weeks. But this one, it felt like, hey, it's kind of a homecoming party for Oklahoma. They're back where we expect to see that logo in the top 10, competing and being a tough out for everybody. So glad to see that this was represented the right way.
Yeah, and USF, 20 there for us, I think is big. Auburn, I believe, is still not ranked in the AP, if I remember correctly, and they're 13 for us. I think we're way more right on that than they are. I will confess, because the computer, there is like a 0.2 differential between two teams that I manually flopped or flipped here. It's Alabama and Florida State. Alabama was still 0.2 ahead of Florida State. It was close enough where I'm like, we've seen this game. I'm going to go ahead and flip those manually. It's why got to have a little bit of a manual input here. We'll see how that goes as the season plays out. Those, different teams play, records are going to change, all that kind of stuff. But you'll be sure to check that out on YouTube, Spotify, both of our Twitter accounts, on Instagram at the Extra Point Pod. You can argue with us about which teams ranked where, and I'll just sit here and tell you it's probably the computer's fault. So,
oh yeah. Blame the computers, dude. That's what I've been doing.
That's right. Dude, isn't that a great pastime for the BCS, is just being able to blame the computers? That was a simpler time instead of blaming committee members now. It's like computers are easy to blame because they're unbiased. They don't care about logos. They didn't watch SMU play Penn State last year. They're just looking at this year's data. So shout out to computers, man. We didn't know how good we had it. Daniel, this will be tough. This is a big week for college football. 3 games we're not picking this week that we are excited to watch.
All right. I think I kind of cheated on this. I'm going to mention my 3. I'll save the 3 that made the cut, but okay. I'm giving you the card. Okay. If you're listening to this because you love college ball, okay, we know the listeners. I'm going to mention all 5. Okay. I've got 5. Here's the 2 honorable mentions. Okay. I'll give those to you first. Backyard Brawl. Okay. We've got Pitt at West Virginia. All right, this is the first backyard brawl with Rich Rodriguez back in the head coach's chair.
Heck yeah.
They had a loss last week. It was ugly. they were looking ahead to this game. All right, Jacob, what if I told you this was the first game that was ever broadcast on the radio? I didn't realize that. I was looking up some stuff about this game, trying to get some inspo. 1921, the first American football game ever over the radio, backyard brawl. This is, industrial folks of Pittsburgh versus the mountain folks of West Virginia. So kind of a clash of cultures. Anyways, that one has always stood out to me. Pitt owns the all-time series by like 20 games, 60, 63 to 45, something like that. So they hold that. They are favored 6.5 points. I don't know, man. I just feel like the loss last week for West Virginia, I think it's related to this. We'll see. This is going to be a game. It's going to be a brawl. So other one, Jacob, is Duke goes to Tulane. That's just like, it was an ACC team traveling to, former SEC team Tulane. But yeah, dude, Jake Retzlaff, I think, is going to have a game, against them. It's straight up, it's a pick 'em basically. It's a half a point is the line, I think, the last I saw. So a pick 'em for a Duke team going and traveling against Tulane. That one, Tulane is building their resume right now alongside South Florida as who is going to represent the group of 6 in the playoff. And so this is the next step for them. All right. Now we got my honorable mentions out of the way. Here's the 3 that I think, and dude, let the haters talk about it. All right. SEC Homer, here it is. Okay. There are 3 great, stinky SEC games all in the peripheral. Okay. One of them, hey, Florida, what are you doing? If you would have just beaten South Florida, you'd be on the card this week. You'd be one of the ones we're talking about. Florida, LSU. I don't think I've ever missed a Florida LSU game. This game always sprouts legs. It's always something to just, hunker down, watch with, watch at bated breath. Something crazy is going to happen in this game. It always does. Usually the team that's favored is the team in turmoil during this one. I'm excited to watch that one. Florida's looking to bounce back. They're looking to ruin LSU's season. LSU, is at home with an 8.5 point line. That line stinks to me. I'd be nervous to pick that game. I'm glad we don't have to. I'd lean at LSU. Still 8.5 points. That stinks. All right. Arkansas is going to Oxford, playing Ole Miss. Right after Ole Miss has that survival game against Kentucky, they jump up to number 3 in the XPR. They're patting themselves on the back. All right. All of a sudden, now they're playing Taylor Green and the sleepy Arkansas Wild Hog Razorbacks. Okay.
Yep.
7.5 points for Ole Miss to lay. I don't know, man. I think Arkansas might win this one outright. I'm not having to pick it. I'm not going to. Arkansas is a dangerous team. They catch you napping, okay? Right after they feel like they just escaped with their lives against Kentucky with a barely healthy quarterback, now they got to play a team that's just going to put it on them. Last game, maybe the best game. Is this the best game of the day that we just don't even know about? And is it Vandy and South Carolina? This one's going to settle a lot. And people will laugh at that because of Vanderbilt, just the name and the logo and everything like that. But these two teams both have a common opponent. South Carolina was praised by me, for beating Virginia Tech. And, Lenore Sellers is, a Heisman darling. He's a favorite. He put it on them, dude. They spanked Virginia Tech. Now, of course, we know the transitive property is 100% in college football. So obviously this means that Vanderbilt's going to destroy South Carolina, right? South Carolina is at home laying 5.5 points. So they're the favorite. Dude, that one has 2 marquee quarterbacks in it. When have you ever said that about a Vanderbilt and South Carolina matchup?
I know.
Not since Jay Cutler, maybe. And I don't even know who the South Carolina quarterback was at the time in the early 2000s. So this is awesome. So very cool. Excited to watch that one. That might be game of the week. We picked these other 4 games. We might go back and be like, dude, did you see South Carolina and Vanderbilt? So anyways.
Yeah, no, it's one that we, it's a game we left on the cutting room floor for games to pick this week. It's a ranked matchup according to the XPR, for what it's worth. Number 21 and number 18. So I'm excited for that one. All right, Daniel, third quarter for me. 3 uniform matchups to watch. I'm also going to mention a few because, several made the cut. I'll give you the top 3. 1, Tennessee versus Georgia. This should be a very clean uniform matchup. I think it always is. The red versus that color orange, I think pops. And you get, again, I've talked about this. There's something about like the home team's wearing white, color, white. The away team's going to wear color, white, color, so the contrast there is going to be very good. Two great uniforms.
Well, you said this one always is, Jacob. Tennessee sometimes likes to
That's
throw on their
fair.
smoky grays or their black. When they do that, throw it
Ruins
out.
the matchup.
Okay.
Well, that's why
I just wanted to clarify.
Uniform. No, thank you.
As long as they're wearing their traditional stuff, it's beautiful.
Yes, big asterisk. So it's funny. If you could see my notes, I wrote "should get" when I wrote out the uniform, like the combo versus combo. I said, "This is what we should get."
Right.
And this is why it's matchups to watch. The award is not awarded until after game day when it's on the field. You got to see how it looks too. I will say the award from last week for Uniform of the Week did go to Oklahoma and Michigan. It was everything we thought it might be. Michigan wore the maize pants. They listened to the podcast. They changed from blue to maize. Thank God. It looked unbelievable under the lights. So shout out to that uniform matchup.
What did Jacob Karnes with a K say on Twitter?
With a K.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
LSU and Florida is my second one. Here's the thing. I do wish UF would have worn all blue. They announced what they're wearing every week this season. They're wearing white pants. It's still going to be a good matchup. But Florida wearing all blue in this one is elite. Yeah. This one's still going to be very good. This is one of the best, I think, one of the best uniform matchups in college football. This game is usually played at night. Just add some pop to those uniforms under the lights. It's going to be very good. Lastly, again, this is not going to surprise you, Daniel. I go with big brands because I think big brands are the best uniforms for the most part. Notre Dame and Texas A&M. You get a blue versus a shade of red, which always looks good. This should be two very classy uniforms. I do hope that Texas A&M wears a maroon helmet and not go all white. I don't think that would look as good as if they went, like maroon, white, maroon, or maroon, white, white would be fine. But, you're going to get the classic gold over navy over gold for Notre Dame. Classic matchup. Under the lights, that golden helmet's going to look gorgeous. A few other ones I've got my eye on. If Miami wears orange and USF wears green, that'll look cool on screen, like wears green pants, like they did at Florida. Ole Miss and Arkansas, depending on what Ole Miss wears, could be good. Like if they're wearing some blue and Arkansas's got the red, that could be pretty good. Cal and Minnesota, again, has the ability to have some interesting combos. So there's a bone to throw over there. We should get some good matchups this weekend. Arizona, Kansas State, I'm on that one, but those are the three I'm excited to see on the field on Saturday. Daniel, let's dive into it, man. There's some big games this weekend. Let's not waste any time. Fourth quarter, 4 picks against the spread. We start at high noon in Atlanta. Georgia Tech hosting Clemson. This line has dropped. Daniel, the line is now at 3.5. This started at closer to a touchdown. Clemson comes off with a loss at home to LSU. They struggle with Troy at home. They were down by 16 at home at one point to Troy. They come back and win that game. Georgia Tech looked good against Colorado. Kind of played with their food last week. It gets a lesser opponent. They get this home game now. It gets Clemson. This game has been circled by both teams. Clemson, the 3.5-point favorite on the road. Who do you like on the flats on Saturday?
Is Haynes King healthy?
Good question.
If he is, so I've heard something about a shoulder that's going to last him his lifetime or something like that. Mm-hmm. And everything under the sun. Oh yeah, it was just a quick, he's just banged up, and obviously this week they could play whoever they wanted to. And Aaron Philo is definitely not a, he's not a silver medalist himself. He's a good player in his own right. Had a good day. This just feels like a lot of people are fading Clemson based off of their stinker of a week last week. I just think there was so much build up to week 1. I think they played really good defense. I think that they got lucky to be as close as they were to LSU, but I think that's more credit to LSU being good and Clemson being in the right place at the right time constantly. But when they played last week, it was concerning. That being said, I like Clemson to win this one. It makes me nervous, 3.5 points that they have to win by 4, because I do see Georgia Tech. I mean, I see a where they come in there and try to, bully Clemson and do that, at least when they're running the ball. But Clemson's got a very good defense. Yeah, let me go ahead. I'm going to lay all the points. I'm not going to try to middle it. I get in trouble when I try to middle things, Jacob. You know this. I tried to middle the Michigan-Oklahoma game. I should have just taken Oklahoma outright with laying the points. Give me Clemson. I'm going to lay these points, 3.5. I feel like you get it at a discount because the line dropped. Georgia Tech is a formidable opponent. Obviously, you and I have both, said stuff like that. This is at Bobby Dodd. It's at noon. There's going to be a ton of Clemson fans there. Short drive for them to come attend this game. Georgia Tech is not a pushover like there are some years where it's a slam dunk. Obviously, we wouldn't be talking about them right now if they were. This defense is going to be the difference for Clemson. I think people are really enthralled with the offense from Georgia Tech, and they're less hot on Clemson's offense, and rightfully so. Clemson needs to spark and have a good day. I think the top, the best that Georgia Tech has and the best that Clemson has is going to be when Clemson's on defense and Georgia Tech's on offense. I like Clemson in that matchup. On the flip side, I think that Georgia Tech's defense has some solid players. I think they're going to make some plays here and there. Overall, I think Clemson has enough to score. I think this is where you see their breakout day for their wide receivers come. I don't necessarily trust the Georgia Tech secondary. I like their linebackers. I like their defensive line. But I think you're going to see Klubnik run sideline to sideline to try to spread them out a little bit. And then I think you're going to see him go over the top to his receivers a little bit. So give me Clemson by a touchdown. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Georgia Tech in this game till the very end.
We're in lockstep. I have Clemson 27-20 in this game. Yeah, they lost against LSU. They were sloppy against Troy. Tech had a good win against Colorado. They were fine last week. I think people are overreacting to Clemson. This is classic early season overreactions. Like I said, it's a long season. Clemson has better athletes at every position than Georgia Tech does. They couldn't run the ball against LSU. I think that changes against Georgia Tech. I do not trust the Georgia Tech run defense. They looked poor in both their games. The Clemson defense has the personnel to challenge the run game against Tech. They can load the box because I don't think Tech has the receivers at all to challenge Clemson secondary. Again, very different than LSU. Georgia Tech does not have the wide receivers to compete and win. Therefore, I think Clemson can man them up and kind of sell out to stop the run if they need to against this formidable Tech offense. So I like Clemson by a touchdown on the road. I think the first spread that came out the opening line was about a touchdown. I think that was more right. I think, again, public money is overreacting to how Clemson looked the last 2 weeks, and I get it. So a lot of money's coming to bring this line down, but I was very happy to see it move because I like Clemson by a touchdown in this game. Give me the Tigers to go on the road, Tigers to win and cover. I'm with you. We moved to 3:30, which is fun, Daniel. We get the best game of the SEC this week in the old primetime slot, which is 3:30. I like the 3:30 primetime for SEC games. Tennessee and Georgia. Georgia's won 8 straight, Daniel. They didn't look great last week. Tennessee has looked good 2 weeks in a row. Nico Who definitely looks like they won the trade with the quarterback. This line opened near a touchdown. It is also down to 3.5. The Vols underdogs at home. Does Heupel finally get his first win against Georgia? Daniel, who do you like in Knoxville?
Yeah, it feels a lot like the one we just talked about a little bit as far as the heavy favorite kind of coming back down from the clouds because of a struggle win in the previous week, and the underdog continuing to look impressive. Now, Tennessee's looked more impressive this season, I would say, maybe than Georgia Tech did. But yeah, I completely agree. Joey Aguilar fits this offense. He's moving around, and then he throws the deep ball so well. And, this isn't to drag like Nico or anything. Even the Tennessee fans probably love that. Last year, Nico is good in the short to intermediate game, and he was good line of scrimmage kind of thing, but he struggled with the deep ball, and his pocket mobility wasn't quite there. He kind of looked a little clumsy. Now, last year they had to win a lot of games defensively, and with Dylan Sampson pounding the rock. This year they kind of get to win it the other way with, lighting up the scoreboard, spreading everybody out. Now, obviously last week was East Tennessee State, but they didn't struggle with them like Georgia did with Austin Peay. And then week 1 against Syracuse, that's at least a well-coached team. We don't know exactly about all their personnel just yet because they had to replace everybody, and then they kind of struggled against UConn. But, that remains to be seen. All this to say, I think that it was good to see for Tennessee these receivers making plays after all the guys they lost last year. You're kind of seeing that production return, and timing is working out well for Aguilar and these guys. The big question here is, was Georgia, like you had mentioned in your quarter two, your question about, was Georgia playing with their food? Were they one of those big, name brand schools playing with their, FCS opponent or whoever? Georgia has not gotten to play a big game yet. This is Georgia's first big game, so you wonder if things are going to be different. Gunnar Stockton did not look impressive against Austin Peay. Curious about his downfield throwing and things of that nature. Georgia did a lot of shuffling on the offensive line, had that big rain delay or lightning delay, and then had moved the game time around due to weather. So I don't know if it was like Georgia just struggling or if this had other things to do with it. I have to go based on what I just think to be true. Like you said, Georgia has won 8 in a row in this rivalry. That's not to say they're going to win the rest of them till the end of time. I do like the matchup of Kirby Smart versus Josh Heupel because I think Josh Heupel's offense does great against a certain caliber of athlete, and I think Georgia has, I don't want to say they've cracked the code, but I think that they can kind of stymie that attack a little bit, and they can kind of hold it at bay. And these will be the best cornerbacks that Tennessee will have faced all year. Georgia is, too deep on each side. They've got 4 phenomenal cornerbacks. Tennessee's going into this game with both starting cornerbacks still out for the third week in a row. They're still not there. Nobody has been able to, I mean, I say nobody. Syracuse was able to throw the ball on them. It was just too little too late. Obviously, East Tennessee is not going to do that. What's going to break first? Is Tennessee's secondary going to break first, or is Georgia's receivers going to, are they going to make plays? That's the biggest question I have. I think that I saw a stat. Heupel's offense averages 34 points a game, but against Georgia, it's 14 points a game, so it's a 20-point difference. I foresee that to be the case. I think that this game is going to be in the teens and 20s against each other. I don't see this one being high scoring. I think that you're going to have a, maybe 24-17 kind of victory. I liked Georgia at around a touchdown. Now you're kind of getting it at a discount, 3.5 points. I don't think you've seen Georgia's best, nor do I think you'll necessarily see it on Saturday, but I think you'll see the best they've been so far this year. Give me the Dogs, lay the points. I trust them. I trust Kirby with the defense. The defense has looked very strong this year. I know the opponents have been bad, but if you look at Georgia the past 2 years against lesser opponents, they have not been stopping the run. They have been not sideline to sideline like we saw them in their national championship years. Georgia looks like their defense is back to that kind of category. So that's where my confidence for Georgia comes in. But I certainly don't think Georgia's going to run away and hide with this one, like I would think if they were playing better or if Tennessee looked worse than they've looked so far. Tennessee's looked pretty strong so far.
Georgia looks soft pickings. Austin Peay. Line opens up at a touchdown. And, dude, everybody saying too many points. Line comes all the way down to 3.5. I've already seen a lot of national guys being like, who look at the camera and say, who do I trust more in this game? I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think it's Tennessee. Daniel, what does this sound like? This sounds like 2022, 2023, and 2024 under Josh Heupel against Kirby Smart. This is a tale as old as time. Look, it's Gunner's first SEC start in the road. I go back to how Carson Beck looked against South Carolina at home in 2023, on the road at Auburn. And it was after that game when Kirby and Mike Bobo said that's when they finally trusted Carson. Was like they needed to go see him do it on the road and rip it. He was hesitant at home against South Carolina. He had to come from behind and win at Auburn, had a couple big throws to win that game. Gunner has to go out there and earn it this week. There were open guys. Last week, I thought he threw the long ball better in game 1 than game 2. I think the biggest concern for Georgia in this game is downfield passing. But I don't think they're going to need it to beat Tennessee this week. Number one, Tennessee's starting 2 corners are out this week. And I think Georgia's wide receiver room is the best they've had under Kirby Smart. And Dingo, this is a game where I think Georgia embodies the identity that Kirby Smart wants this team to have. I think last year they got away from the identity and they won the SEC. And Kirby Smart said that was the best coaching job that he and his staff has done at Georgia, was with that team. This team seems to embody the identity Kirby Smart has set for this team. The offense looks night and day running the ball. from it did last year, both from an effort and an athlete standpoint. This defense has been the kryptonite for Josh Heupel, like you mentioned. In 4 starts against Georgia, Heupel's offense has scored 17, 13, 10, and 17. So how many points does Georgia need to win this game? I'm going to say they need 20 points to win this game. And do I think Georgia can score 20 points, even if the downfield passing is not there against this Tennessee defense? I absolutely do. Georgia's won this game by a margin of victory of 24, 14, 28, and 14 points the last 4 trips. The biggest margins of victory actually coming on the road in Knoxville. The last 2 times they've played there, 24 and 28 points. This will be the first real look at Georgia. I think we've seen Georgia play with their food multiple times under Kirby Smart. You saw it in 22 against Samford. You saw it in 22 in that year against Kent State. You saw it in 23 against UAB. Georgia kind of does this. Daniel, I think for the first time in 2 years, we see the boa constrictor on Saturday. I think Georgia and Tennessee is a very close game for a half. And I think Georgia is just going to sit there and sit on Tennessee and squeeze the life out of them. I like Georgia by a touchdown. I like Georgia by 10 plus in this game. I do like this game to go under. I think Georgia wins this game 27-13, which would actually match that 22 score in that game in Athens. I think Kirby Smart is fine winning this game by 1 point. I think it looks like a few of these games where Georgia gets a lead in the third quarter and is like, yeah, I just don't think Tennessee is going to score much. So Georgia to win and cover. This is a tale as old as time. Until it happens, I'm going to really trust that Kirby Smart's got Josh Heupel's number. And I'm not just saying that because of previous year's results. Even from what I've seen from this year, I think people have way overblown the performance last week and kind of looped it in. I've heard someone say Georgia's looked terrible through 2 weeks. They looked dominant in week 1 against Marshall. They had the second highest net success rate against Marshall in week 1 of any team in the country. And again, it's not to see you play, it's how you beat them. Georgia handled business. They did not handle business last week. But I've seen enough of like looping in, like Georgia's looked terrible this season and Tennessee's looked great when they finally got ahead and beat a Syracuse team that almost lost at home to UConn. Then they dominated, ETSU. They took care of business, what they should have done. I just think the books knew what they were doing when they opened this at a touchdown. And similar to 2022, Daniel, this game opened up at a 10-point line in 2022. It came all the way back down to 6.5. And then around game time, the Sharps came on and bet UGA back up to 10 before game time. So this is the lowest point spread we've had in this rivalry game. In I think it was literally 8 years since Georgia started winning. So I think Georgia gets a 9th in a row here against Tennessee in Knoxville. Really excited to watch this game. I'm going to have to see it to believe it if I think Tennessee is going to beat Georgia. Let's go to Miami and USF, a ranked matchup. USF was the look-ahead game for Florida last week. Now they're in a look-ahead spot with Miami this week, kind of. But now they're the ranked matchup. Miami can't overlook this game. Daniel, is this the best live event ever on the CW? Probably.
Yeah, either that or
games.
the best live sporting event, the Riverdale season finale probably was.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
We'll see.
No, this is for sure. For sure.
Yeah, who do you like in Miami?
Yeah, this one, South Florida, I just think of them as like that meme with like the Grim Reaper where they keep going into the room and killing. It's like the first one they kill is Boise State. Their playoff chances are gone. Then they go in and kill Florida. Is Miami next? Like, are they going to do this to Miami as well? I actually love this line. I think that this is spot on for how I feel about this game. I think Miami, what we've seen from them so far, being dominant on lines of scrimmage, where maybe I wasn't expecting to see that so far this season. Miami being a little bit a tougher out than we maybe had envisioned going into the year. They're number 10 in our XPR. Obviously, they've got Carson Beck at quarterback, but it really seems like this identity is a little bit different. It kind of seems more like a Cristobal team where, they're really good on both lines of scrimmage. I think that that's going to be tough for a USF to overcome. And I think that you're going to see the value of like being in a bigger, tougher conference. Whereas USF, they're not used to taking these blows one week after the other. So having Florida last week, they're, in their honeymoon phase of winning that game. I think the Cinderella story is over. I think they're going to lose this game to Miami. 17 points is really where I'm at. I really think that Miami could, it's 3 possessions, but, not something where they're completely blowing them out. I think I'm going to go ahead and take Miami to cover the points, though. 17.5, it's right there where I really want to take the points with South Florida, but I'm just going to take Miami. I feel like there is a chance that once the back has been broken, that does kind of get away late, perhaps a late cover touchdown.
Yeah.
After the game has basically been won, to kind of put the nail in the coffin. But give me Miami, lay the points. South Florida, great story, good opponent. This isn't like they're just playing nobody, but going back-to-back weeks against this physical of team is just going to be too tough.
Yeah, this is, I would still argue this is a look-ahead spot, despite South Florida being firmly on the radar. They still have Florida next week. I'm with you on that. This is a line of scrimmage game. USF doesn't have the guys. And here's the thing. I think Miami has a serious advantage on both lines of scrimmage. I would have said that last week going into the Florida game, and I just don't think Florida's offensive line is nearly as good as I thought it was going to be.
Right.
South Florida's defensive line was able to get some push. I don't think I've already seen Miami's both lines of scrimmage be very good against Notre Dame, whose identity as a program is good in the lines of scrimmage. So I trust Miami's lines of scrimmage a lot more in this game. Therefore, I worry about USF, especially their pass defense against Beck and these receivers. I'm with you on that. I just don't think they're going to win the game. That being said, it's 17.5 points.
Yeah.
I think it's too many points by a half point. Like I really do see this as like a 38-21 game where maybe USF scores a late touchdown to get a cover, and it was 38-14, and Miami's like, look, we've got a long season. We've got Florida next week. Let's put the backups in. And the half point does scare me enough. And USF, I think, this is a Super Bowl. They could go beat Florida and Miami. My wife's also a USF graduate. So give me the Bulls and the points. I think Miami wins. I think it's convincing. Give me South Florida, the Bulls, and the 17.5 points. I think Miami might win this thing by 17, and I'll be sitting here with a South Florida cover. I've got a South Florida hat. Meant to wear that today, but that's okay. It's with us in spirit. The nightcap, Daniel, on NBC, the Golden Dome, touchdown Jesus, South Bend, Indiana, Notre Dame versus Texas A&M. This is a great game last year that Notre Dame kind of got into an early lead. Did they get to an early lead or did they break it open late? I know it never seemed like A&M had a chance in the game. It was either they got to an early lead and sat on them, or it was neck and neck, and it felt like Notre Dame should have had the lead the whole time. Now I can't remember. But Notre Dame gets the return trip from Texas A&M. They won in Week 1 in Aggieland last year. Now Texas A&M's got to go to South Bend. First test for A&M. Notre Dame's been tested. Both teams need this win. Great out-of-conference matchup. Daniel, who do you like in South Bend?
Yeah, so Notre Dame, so far this season, Notre Dame has looked the part. When they played against Miami, I thought they were just going to out-physical Miami. Miami out-physicaled them and really dominated the middle 8 of the game, right at the end of half, beginning of the next half. And I think that's what really put Notre Dame kind of behind the 8 ball. The fact that they came storming back and made that a game and almost won the game there at the end, they tied it. I think that's going to say a lot about this team. I think Notre Dame comes out with a win. I'm curious with Texas A&M. We still have not seen Reed have to do too much in the pass game. He's been like a one read down the field and take off with the ball. I don't think that could win you the game against Notre Dame. If he kind of, develops a little bit in this game and you start to see him make plays to those receivers, I feel a little bit better about Texas A&M hanging in there. Marcel Reed, I was trying to filibuster while I was finding his name. And his last name was Reed. He's their leading rusher this year as well. So, I've got questions about that. Jacob, they're one of the teams that I said at the beginning of the year I would not be surprised if they make the playoff. I think I had them actually in my playoff. I would not be surprised if they won the SEC in the sense that they have the talent to do so. They're over 80% in the blue chip ratio. Team talent composite's very high. They've got guys on this team that could play. I think most of the developed talent is on the defensive side of the ball. So I do think that that's going to lead to this being a low scoring game. I just think Notre Dame is too good of a team at home to lose. They've only played the one game against Miami, so they've been sitting on it for 2 weeks. So yeah, give me the Irish. I'm going to lay the points. It's a 7-point spread. I would argue it's a stinker. If it was 6.5, I feel good about a touchdown.
Yeah.
7 points, it would give me. But I think by the end of that, we're looking at a Notre Dame 10-point win. And I think it's low scoring. I think you're looking at 24-14 kind of a game where Notre Dame has really, put the clamps on this Texas A&M offense. But just over the course of the game, I think Notre Dame has had an identity check against Miami. And you're going to see CJ Carr not in his first game. He'll be in his second game. And I think Jeremiah Love will get more carries, and they'll, kind of, hey, let's play the hits. Let's do what got us to the college football playoff last year, to the national championship game. Let's do that again this year. And again, I feel like they're going to be right there where they need to be. Give me the Irish, lay the points.
Okay. What's Notre Dame's identity this year? That's a question I have. Is CJ Carr, at least through a couple games, and he actually got tested in week 1. Don't think he's the answer through the air yet. The receivers I have some questions about. I will say, Daniel, I disagree a little bit in that I don't know if this is as low scoring as you say it's going to be. Neither defense has lived up to their team standard yet. Both of these head coaches have a very high standard of excellence when it comes to defense. I don't think either defense has lived up to that standard yet. I mean, Texas A&M gave up over 20 points to UTSA and Utah State. I don't think that's up to their standard as a defense. Texas A&M's passing offense is an improvement on last year. Still waiting to see more from the rushing offense from A&M. I do think like when Notre Dame's passing the ball, I do think Texas A&M's pass defense has the advantage when that's going on in this game. Now, when Notre Dame's rushing the ball, I actually think Notre Dame's offense is a big advantage rushing, so far at least. We look at opponent-adjusted stats. Like Texas A&M's defense have been one of the worst in the country against the run thus far, which isn't good when you're playing bad opponents, especially against UTSA in Game 1. Their running back went 16 carries for 177 yards against the Texas A&M defense. That's not a great sign when you're about to go up against a Notre Dame offensive line and Jeremiah Love on the other side. And then when Texas A&M's on offense, I do like their passing offense better against the Notre Dame pass defense. Obviously, they lost like some corners and safeties at the draft last year, but I do think A&M has an advantage there at receiver and with Marcel Reed. But then again, if I look at the other side, when Texas A&M is running the ball, I love Notre Dame's run defense to actually hold them down. Like Beck was able to get some air yards, but they pretty much shut down Miami's run game in that game, especially when they started coming back. I do think it's going to be a close game, and I'll take the team that can stop the run and run the ball better in Notre Dame. But at 7, I think it's going to be a closer game, and I think it's going to be higher scoring than last year. Last year, this was 24-13 in College Station. I think Notre Dame wins, Daniel, like 31-28, which would go over the number here. So I like it to be, not high scoring. I think higher scoring compared to last year, right? Compared to what these teams are used to. So I like Notre Dame to win. I do like A&M to cover on the road here. I think I'm with you on like 6.5. I would be very tempted to take Notre Dame at 7. I've seen Notre Dame. I haven't seen A&M yet. I don't know enough, but from what I've seen, I think they can hang with them on the road. And I don't think either one of these teams is going to blow the other one out. I'm confident Notre Dame wins. I'm taking the points with Texas A&M. So that completes my, this is my week of the road teams. I took every road team either as a favorite or took points with road teams this week. So this is my
took
road
all the
team
favorites.
week.
I'm realizing that.
Hey, you should get at least 50% then, against the spread.
Yeah, we have our own little formula, I guess we're doing. You're going all road, I'm going all favorites, and we'll see which one ends up working out.
We'll see what works
better.
out.
Right.
We are both 4-5 on the season. So that's sitting at, I'm looking here, 44% against the number. We both need a 3-1 week, which we can do. We can both, get the games we picked together correctly and then split the other ones. And that would get us both at 4-1, which would be a win for the pod. Go 3-1, get us above 500, and then live above there for the rest of the season, which would be great.
Absolutely.
Be sure to follow us here at the Extra Point Pod on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. We'll see you next week with our week 4 episode with our 4 quarters, recapping week 3 and picking the next week, the week ahead. Be sure to follow Daniel on Twitter at DeepSouthDaniel. You can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Karnes with a K. That'll do it for this edition of The Extra Point. He is Daniel. I am Jacob. See ya.